There's a particular kind of poverty that has nothing to do with your bank account. It's the poverty of spending your final decades chasing what you should have stopped wanting years ago. Charlie Munger understood this better than most, not because he was frugal in the cliched sense, but because he'd figured out something most people never do, that the psychology of spending matters infinitely more than the mathematics of it. Before we go any further, I need to say this clearly. Nothing you hear today is financial advice. I'm not your advisor, and I don't know your situation. This is simply one person sharing observations about wisdom that deserves to be remembered. Take what serves you, question everything, and always consult with qualified professionals before making financial decisions. And if you find value in what we explore together today, I'd be grateful if you take a moment to subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell me what resonates, what challenges you, or what you're still figuring out. This conversation doesn't end when the video does. So here's the question that frames everything. What does it mean to spend wisely when you no longer have the luxury of time to recover from your mistakes? Munger spent the better part of a century thinking about decision-making, and while most people associate him with investing, his deepest insights had almost nothing to do with stock tickers or quarterly earnings. They had to do with human nature, with the stories we tell ourselves, the comparisons we make, the anxieties we carry, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing enough is enough. He once said that the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. Most people hear that and think about their portfolios. But Munger was talking about something broader. The compounding of peace, of simplicity, of accumulated wisdom. Every foolish purchase in retirement isn't just a withdrawal from your account. It's an interruption of the life you've spent decades trying to build. Let me tell you about a man I knew. We'll call him Robert. Robert retired at 62 with what most financial planners would call a comfortable nest egg. Not wealthy by any stretch, but solid. Enough to live on if he was reasonable. For the first year, he was reasonable. He traveled modestly, saw his grandchildren, played golf on Thursdays. Then something shifted. He started noticing what his neighbors had. A new RV parked in the driveway 3 houses down, his brother-in-law's boat, the upgraded kitchen his former colleague posted on social media. Within 3 years, Robert had burned through 30% of his savings, trying to keep pace with spending that had nothing to do with his actual life. The tragedy wasn't the money. It was watching a man who'd worked 40 years for freedom hand that freedom back in exchange for things he didn't even want until he saw someone else had them. This is what Munger meant when he talked about envy being the stupidest of the 7 deadly sins. Because, unlike greed or gluttony, you don't even get any fun out of it. You're just miserable, comparing yourself to people who are probably just as miserable comparing themselves to someone else. The psychology of spending in retirement is really the psychology of identity. For decades, your spending was tied to building a life, raising children, establishing a career, creating a home. Those expenditures had purpose woven into them. But in retirement, the scaffolding comes down. The kids are raised, the career is over, the house is paid off or downsized. And suddenly, you're left with a question that's far more philosophical than financial. Who am I now, and what do I actually need? Munger's answer to this was elegant in its simplicity. He believed in living well below your means, not as an act of deprivation, but as an act of independence. He understood that every dollar you don't need to spend is a dollar of freedom. Freedom from worry. Freedom from the market's mood swings. Freedom from needing to impress anyone or prove anything. There's a phrase he used often. I did not intend to get rich. I just wanted to get independent. By the time he said that, he was a billionaire, which makes it easy to dismiss as false modesty. But if you look at how he actually lived, there's truth in it. He lived in the same house for decades, drove unremarkable cars, didn't collect yachts or chase status symbols. His spending reflected his values, and his values were utterly immune to what anyone else thought. For retirees, this is the hardest lesson and the most liberating one. You are no longer building. You are living off what you built. And the question isn't how much you can spend. It's how little you need to spend to live the life that actually satisfies you. Munger talked often about the power of incentives, about how people respond not to what you tell them, but to what you reward. In retirement, the world is filled with incentives designed to separate you from your money. Pharmaceutical companies want you afraid. Financial advisors want you active. Consumer brands want you inadequate. The entire apparatus of modern marketing is built on the assumption that you are one purchase away from the life you deserve. But Munger knew something crucial. The life you deserve is the one you already have, properly appreciated. I remember reading about a study done years ago on happiness and spending. Researchers found that beyond a certain threshold of financial security, additional spending didn't correlate with additional happiness. In fact, in many cases, it correlated with less, because every new purchase brought with it new maintenance, new anxiety, new comparisons. The retirees who reported the deepest satisfaction weren't the ones with the biggest budgets. They were the ones who'd figured out what mattered and stopped spending on everything else. Munger's partner, Warren Buffett, used to say that the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. In retirement, this wisdom becomes survival. You cannot say yes to every cruise, every gadget, every solicitation, every grandchild's request, every fear-driven insurance product, every upgrade, every trend. You will run out of money, or worse, you'll run out of peace. The psychology of spending is the psychology of saying no, gracefully, confidently, without guilt. Here's what nobody tells you about retirement. The first few years are when you're most vulnerable. You have energy. You have dreams deferred. You have a sense that you've earned the right to enjoy yourself. And you have. But enjoyment and expenditure are not the same thing. The retirees who thrive are the ones who separate those two ideas early. They learn to find joy in what costs little or nothing. A morning walk, a library book, a long conversation, a home-cooked meal, time with people they love. Munger believed deeply in the value of reading, of learning, of intellectual engagement. These are pleasures that compound. The more you invest in them, the richer they become, and they cost almost nothing. Compare that to the depreciating returns of material spending, the new car that's ordinary within 6 months, the vacation that's a memory within 6 weeks, the gadget that's outdated within 6 days. This isn't about being cheap. It's about being wise. It's about recognizing that your money in retirement isn't just currency. It's time. It's security. It's the difference between depending on your children and being independent. It's the buffer between you and financial catastrophe. Munger once said, A lot of people with high IQs are terrible investors because they've got terrible temperaments. The same applies to spending. You can have all the knowledge in the world about safe withdrawal rates and tax-efficient strategies, but if you have the temperament of someone who needs to keep up, who needs to indulge every impulse, who cannot sit still with enough, no amount of knowledge will save you. Temperament in retirement means accepting that you are no longer in accumulation mode. You are in preservation and distribution mode. Every decision has consequences that you may not have time to undo. This focuses the mind wonderfully, or at least it should. Let me share another story. A woman named Margaret, 74, widowed, living on a fixed pension and Social Security. By every conventional measure, she should have been anxious about money. Her budget was tight, but when I spoke with her, she radiated a kind of contentment I rarely see. She'd learned something that had taken her years to accept. She didn't need permission to stop wanting more. She had a small apartment she loved, a routine that brought her joy, friends she saw regularly, a church community that mattered to her. And crucially, she had stopped watching commercials, stopped scrolling through social media, stopped exposing herself to the constant drumbeat of inadequacy that modern life demands. "I don't know what I'm missing," she told me, "and I've decided I don't want to know." That's Munger's philosophy in 8 words. One of the most dangerous myths in retirement is the idea that you've earned the right to relax your discipline. You've worked hard, you've saved, you've sacrificed. Now you deserve to enjoy it. And yes, you do deserve to enjoy it, but enjoyment doesn't require recklessness. In fact, the deepest enjoyment comes from the security of knowing you've protected what you built. Munger had a phrase he loved: invert, always invert. He meant that you should look at problems backward. Instead of asking, "How do I get rich?" ask, "How do I avoid staying poor?" Instead of asking, "How can I spend more?" ask, "What happens if I spend less?" In retirement, inversion is everything. What happens if the market crashes and I've been spending at the top of my range? What happens if I live to 95 instead of 85? What happens if healthcare costs explode? What happens if inflation persists? These aren't pessimistic questions. They're prudent ones, and the retirees who ask them early are the ones who sleep well later. Munger also believed in the idea of a margin of safety, borrowed from Benjamin Graham, but applied far beyond investing. In retirement, a margin of safety means spending less than you safely could. It means keeping a buffer. It means assuming things will go wrong, because they often do, and preparing for that reality without bitterness or fear. I've watched retirees destroy themselves not through catastrophic decisions, but through 1,000 small ones. The subscription services that renew automatically, the charity solicitations that guilt them into giving beyond their means, the sales pitches disguised as seminars, the financial products they don't understand but sign up for anyway because someone in a suit made them feel foolish for asking questions. Munger hated complexity. He believed that if you couldn't explain something simply, you probably didn't understand it, and you certainly shouldn't be investing in it. The same holds for spending. If you can't explain why you're buying something in one clear sentence, you probably shouldn't buy it. Retirement is not the time for complexity. It's the time for clarity. Here's a truth that sounds harsh, but is actually liberating. Nobody cares about your spending as much as you think they do. Your neighbors aren't keeping score. Your friends aren't judging you. Your children want you secure, not impressive. The only person you need to satisfy with your spending is yourself, and the version of yourself that matters most is the one who wakes up at 3 in the morning worrying about money. Munger understood that peace of mind isn't a luxury. It's the whole point. You can have a mansion and no peace, or a modest home and deep contentment. The spendings that matters is the spending that aligns with your actual values, not the values you think you should have, not the values advertisers want you to have, but the ones you'd defend if your life depended on it. And in retirement, in a very real sense, your life does depend on it. Let's talk about what Munger called the Lollapalooza effect. The idea that when multiple psychological biases combine, they create outcomes far more extreme than any single bias would. In retirement spending, this effect is everywhere. You have recency bias making you overweight recent market gains. You have social proof making you copy what others are doing. You have authority bias making you trust people in positions of power. You have scarcity thinking making you fear missing out. All of these combine to create spending decisions that feel rational in the moment but look insane in hindsight. The defense against this is simple but not easy. Think for yourself. Question everything. Slow down. Munger believed that the biggest investing mistakes came from acting too quickly, from feeling pressure to do something when doing nothing was the right answer. The same applies to spending. Most financial regrets in retirement come from decisions made impulsively, emotionally, or under pressure. You don't need to decide today. You don't need to buy now. You don't need to keep up. You need to think clearly, and clear thinking requires space and time. One of the things Munger admired most was the ability to change your mind when the facts changed. But he also believed in core principles that shouldn't change. In retirement, one core principle should be this: protect what you have before you chase what you want. It's not exciting. It won't impress anyone. But it's the difference between a retirement of dignity and one of dependence. I think about the retirees I've known who've done this well. They share certain traits. They're not necessarily the wealthiest. They're not the ones with the fanciest lifestyles. But they have something more valuable. They have margin. They have options. They have the ability to be generous when it matters and frugal when it doesn't. They've accepted their mortality without being morbid about it. They understand that their money is a tool, not a scorecard. And crucially, they've made peace with enough. Munger once said, "It is remarkable how much long-term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. In retirement, not being stupid means not spending yourself into dependency. It means not confusing consumption with happiness. It means not letting your ego write checks your future can't cash. This is harder than it sounds because we live in a culture that equates spending with living. But retirees who figured it out know differently. They know that the best things in their lives cost little or nothing. They know that status is a trap. They know that simplicity is a gift you give yourself. As I think about the arc of Munger's life, what strikes me isn't the wealth he accumulated, it's the freedom he protected. He was free to think, free to say no, free to spend his time on what mattered to him, and that freedom came not from having everything, but from needing very little. For those of us navigating retirement, the lesson is clear. The psychology of spending isn't really about spending at all. It's about identity, values, and the courage to live differently than the world expects. It's about recognizing that you've already won the game if you have enough, and that the only way to lose now is to keep playing as if you haven't. Your spending in retirement is a reflection of what you believe about yourself and the life you want to live. Make it honest. Make it intentional. Make it yours. And when you get it right, when you find that balance between enjoying what you have and protecting what you need, you'll discover something Munger knew all along, that the deepest wealth has nothing to do with what you own and everything to do with what you no longer want. Thank you for spending this time here. I hope something in these words serves you in the years ahead. Until we meet again, may your decisions be wise, your needs be simple, and your days be peaceful.